Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 341, Cerberus, the Dog of Hades. Link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links to my books, blogs. This is an academic work. It's only 26 pages, so this is basically like a scientific paper more than an actual book. But it is one of the most fascinating reads, I think, that I've actually come across, so it's still highly recommended. And it's about Cerberus. Part of it is linguistic. It's about the use of Cerberus as a word, Cerberos. There are other words that are involved, like Kabbalah, but not Kabbalah as in like the Jewish magical system, but as in the Hindu, the Vedic term. It talks about Cerberus, the actual dog from Greek mythology, although pointing out that it was honed more by the Romans. Really, it takes a more outsized role once the Romans adopt that particular religious system. There's inclusions in Norse mythology. Of course, you've got Odin's wolves. You've got the dogs of Yama in Hinduism. You also have mentions briefly in the Zendavesta. You also have mentions in other systems too, certain Mesoamerican lore. Like there was one story they talked about how after death, in order to reach sort of like the happy hunting ground, you had to walk across a log that was guarded by a two-headed dog. The four-eyed dog or the two different dogs mentioned in Hinduism. And so it's kind of a spooky subject because it's very, very interesting how similar traditions coming from disparate cultures which did not intertwine any recent time. Like, yes, Hinduism sort of seeps through the Zoroastrian world into parts of southeastern Europe and Greece and stuff. Greek inclusions, Greco-Roman inclusions influenced the Norse later on. Norse inclusion definitely seeped in reversely. Mesoamerican lore, in the lore of tribes in the Americas, both north and south. Certainly it sort of creates a pairing with Catholicism at points and things like that. But the cultural backdrops are so similar, it argues the very extent of them inter-influencing one another when we know that's probably not the case. It's interesting how the idea of deformed hounds plays a role, especially in the aspect of guarding an underworld or guarding the dead or guarding the portal to paradise, something like that. It's funny because like in the sense of the American myths, certainly they weren't influenced by the Norse. They weren't influenced by the Greeks. They evolved separately, and yet you'd have to go back to before the Bering Land Bridge traveling or possibly the migration of the Solutreans. You'd have to go back quite some distance, prior Ice Age, literally, in order to have a common focal point for these mythologies. They would have had to be oral in tradition. They would have diverged heavily, which would explain things, but mainline anthropology, at least at this particular juncture, is still iffy about accepting that some common origin point for these spiritual systems existed. Now, 100 years ago, back in this era, they all took it for granted that that was the fact. They saw the comparisons and contrasts between religious systems. They said, geez, we're studying all these cultures from around the world. We're finding out that they have all of these different components virtually in common with just variations on a theme. How could this possibly be the case? Now, the modern anthropologist leans more towards, well, humans have a certain psyche, and there are certain universal sort of unifying features of their biology, fight and flight, lust for survival, wanting to reproduce and stuff. And so things are similarly treated by different groups of people, even where their understanding is totally different, due to different technology, language, culture, etc. The old guard anthropologists would say, no, obviously this points towards a central origin. Now, a lot of times they would say it was either biblical or Atlantean in nature. We can push it back, though, further. These people didn't even know that Catalhoyuk existed, so pushing it back the human timeline thousands and thousands of years earlier, to a very archaic stage, to a pre-Copper Age civilization of some sort, you get into some really, really spooky tales, potentially, about the human timeline and the development of spirituality. And, of course, you get the ancient alien stuff and all that cool stuff. That, again, there's this place in me that wants to debate over the veracity of the idea of the Anunnaki, but we won't get into that. But anyway, this getting off topic, but this is a very good work. I know it's short, but it treats on a large number of cultures. There are significant comparisons made between especially the Greek and Hindu systems with these asides into other cultures as well, getting heavily into linguistics also. So again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon, second and third links to my books blogs. That's about all. Peace out.